Hey Phil, we're back. What's happening?
Great to see you again, man. Yeah, nothing much, man. Just into the NBA, obviously. It's heating up now.
Yeah, we had a good NBA chat, which I always love,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
time to talk about a bit more pressing issues now.
yeah, of
Very serious
course, of
topics.
course,
And
of
why,
course.
why we're here today, Phil, is I want to touch on basically one of the more pressing, important, and I feel very crucial elements to housing affordability that's happening right now. And, kind of we're projecting out 10 years from now, what's it going to look like? I have
Yeah.
a theory, and I've got like a lot of data points and things that we look at every day as well that we kind of study and try to project out with the economy. We have a theory that the middle class has a strong chance of essentially being wiped out.
Hmm.
And why I say that is we are comparing what's happening today to what kind of happened in the 1970s. So the 1970s was the last time we saw this inflationary market. We saw inflation, CPI numbers go to like 20%. Now, CPI readings have changed. So even though we saw like 8% inflation last year, if you compare it to the 1970s, it was actually higher. So inflation has, kind of always been persistent, and we've just went through an even greater inflationary period. But since the 1970s, when we saw that inflation happen, the dollar was essentially depegged from gold standard. So
Yeah.
that was kind of this turning point in our market, in our economy, because there was no real, limit to how much government could print money to stimulate economy since then. So I was reading some stats, and I this is why I think essentially inflation kills economies. So the
Mm.
last time, the dollar was depegged from the gold standard, cumulative inflation has gone up more than 2,000%. Since
Wow.
the
That's
1970s, yeah,
yeah,
2,000%, more than 2,000%. Since
yeah,
the 1970s, our median wages have only gone up 300 to 500%, so 3 to 4x as an example.
yeah,
And that's,
yeah,
I'll get to that a bit later as well.
yeah,
Property prices today in Australia are now 16.4 times median household incomes.
yeah.
So that's the last cycle we've had since the 1970s till the 2020s. And then we had the pandemic. After pandemic, what happened? We printed a whole lot of money. We stimulated the economy, and we printed a record amount of money, by the way, trillions of dollars,
Yeah.
which was great
Yeah.
because we needed that at the time, and I get that. But a flow-on effect was inflation has increased significantly. It's caused, true-flation. So for prices from COVID to where they are now are more than 30% higher. And these are just
Mm.
day-to-day, like essentials, groceries,
Yeah.
eggs, milk, bread, all up significantly. People are living paycheck to paycheck. Median wages have barely moved.
Hmm.
So in this time frame, we also saw a rate hiking cycle to make things even harder on the everyday Australian.
Yeah.
The pockets are more tight. They're spending more on their mortgages. Housing affordability went to a record high. And during this hiking cycle, we saw a small correction in property prices in 2022 Q1 and Q3. And now they're back at all-time highs. And we've got states at new highs, to be honest. So property
Yeah.
prices didn't even decline during this rate hiking cycle. We've got now an economy where we are still never going to see the prices we saw in 2020. That inflation is embedded into the economy. So
100%.
so many people struggling today just to meet ends, and we've got asset prices still climbing higher. So
Yeah.
it makes me think when wage growth isn't moving anywhere close to the rate that, assets are growing, property is growing, and people need to start, getting into the market, buying homes. How are they going to afford to enter the market and secure something that's going to help them, grow their wealth and create some, wealth from, the next generation? It's very, very difficult. And most of this impacts the middle class. So even the wage growth we've seen, if you look at the data, the wage growth, has been like 300 to 500% higher since like the 1970s. That's basically in the top, 5% of earners. So we're talking, higher up in the corporate ladder, for example, we're talking the highest
Yeah.
paid. Your
CEOs and things like that.
CEOs, and it might not be CEO level, but I'm talking, top 5% earners,
Yeah.
whatever role that may be in across all industries. But if you look at, entry-level jobs, mid-management, for example, they haven't moved enough or not nearly enough. That's why it's
Mm.
clear, even today in Sydney, you need to have like more than $350,000 household income just to be able to sustain by buying a property at like $1.5 million.
Yeah.
And consider the fact that you might have kids in the future and you've got all these other expenses. it's near impossible. So this next rate cutting cycle, yes, it's going to help. It's going to help us, with our mortgages and help with us having more savings for everyday essentials, taking the kids out, whatever it may be. But it's also going to help property prices go higher.
Yeah,
That's crucial. So that dream, that Australian dream, is still further and further out of reach. So
yeah,
I truly believe the next 10 years might literally be the most important of this generation because the way the game is being played today is if you're not investing in hard assets, something that's a hedge against inflation, like property, like a hard intrinsic asset, you're going to be falling behind. You need your money to outperform inflation, so more than like 7% per year. And it's not doing that in the bank savings account.
mm,
And if they're going to cut rates, and we're already seeing, softening in the global economy of the US, if there was, any more softening here, that value of the dollar is going to decline even more.
yeah, yeah,
And global
yeah,
debt is at all-time highs across the board. So I'm not going to go in that today. But overall, I'm just kind of very scared of the next 10 years that the middle class is going to be wiped out. And what's scary enough is I'm not even talking about the impacts of AI on the jobs, on the job market the next 5 years.
yeah,
Where
yeah,
wages are already not increasing. I was speaking to one of our clients today, and they're having massive redundancies across the board. And they
mm,
work in IT. So this is happening in so many different industries today. And people are just legit scared. And it's not just from, just today cost of living and how we're going to get through tomorrow. It's like, will I have a job tomorrow? How am I going to increase my income? What do I do if AI takes
mm.
over my work?
Yeah, so many industries have become really fragile. IT is one specifically, right? I don't know if you've seen like they're even talking about AI being completely coding literally everything. So even coding, that whole skill that so many people have learned is just going to be redundant now, right?
Mhm.
And also with the properties being at all-time highs with so much cash being printed, that was the same thing for the share market.
Yeah,
Each every couple of months, it felt like each market was hitting all-time highs.
yeah.
And even with the tariff announcement with Trump as announcing, there were all-time lows, all-time losses for days as well. So
Yeah,
there is so much volatility and it's so fragile. And
yeah.
funnily enough, I literally had this exact conversation with my little cousin. You know, he always calls me now and he always like asks me things about finance because he's always trying to, learn more. He's on six figures, right? He's 24 years old and he still feels like, wow, where can I go? What can I do? I'm trying to save. I've saved like 50K at 24 years old, which is very good. You know, he's done well. But then property prices has gone up 100K that year. So it's like, what do I do? Right. And so that's why it's really important to really have a hard asset because, as you said, you've seen those graphs, I'm sure, where as soon as gold stopped being pegged to the US dollar, just the value of everything just exploded, whereas our wages just pretty much stayed the same. And
100%.
it's essentially the same thing in literally every industry. And every industry is finding these crazy extremes, whereas something like property, it's essentially not guaranteed success, but people need to live in these properties. There's not something that needs to get wiped out. And it's something that has an intrinsic value. That's a word that's not really being used as much when people are investing,
Mhm.
something with actual intrinsic value. Like, for example, cryptos, yeah, you're going to make money, right? You're going to make money and even in shares, day trading
I
as
make
well, you're
money in
going to make,
Filecoin.
yeah, there you go. There you go, right? But then you see someone like, Donald Trump will announce, I'm going to buy Tesla now, and then everyone's going to start buying Teslas, and then you start like you can do all these things, but when you get something into research and you really look into deep into something like property, like something that's really shown and proven to be successful, and something that is not really have something that competes against it, right?
Mhm.
Like for example, with property, there's nothing else that can beat property. You need a house to live on. Whereas if you've got a business, every business changes. For example, a buyer's agent maybe 10 years ago wasn't as important as it is now, but now a buyer's agent is so critical because there's just so much like competitive information out there that you need to select the right thing. And that same conversation I had with my cousin and saying you did well really saving, but what you need to focus is literally exactly everything what you said. This next 10 years is really critical. A lot of economies around the world are failing and some economies are rising. There's a lot of volatility. And the one thing that isn't volatile is property at the moment,
Yeah,
right? We've seen it consistently, even with Melbourne at the worst market in the country, it still didn't lose that much. And
yeah,
you still wouldn't have been in that much of a loss, especially if you compare it to something else. And the main thing that I was saying to him is no matter what, if you find the right buyer's agent, if you find the right property, it's going to grow faster than you can save. And it's just not even a discussion. It's not even, it's just fact. There's no other way around it.
yeah, 100%. And when you're talking to your cousin or like anyone younger generation,
Yeah.
like we've got clients that are younger than 25 years old, and you've got people that are really switched on and determined they see what's coming and they're very focused on doing everything they possibly can to get their first
Yeah.
deposit. Because once you
Yeah.
enter the market, you've kind of got that equity growth coming to you at some point where you can start to
Yeah.
really expand and build wealth. And they understand that. But
Mm.
for people who are finding it more hard to, get a deposit, for example, maybe your cousin, what are they thinking? Like, are they thinking, I might not be able to afford a house ever? Are they scared of being priced out permanently? Like, what kind of thoughts are going through their minds when you speak to
The thing is that, right, is can I save enough, right? And also is just not knowing where to buy because people don't feel comfortable buying
them?
outside somewhere they can physically touch, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that I hear about clients say is if I can't drive there within a day, I
Mm.
don't feel comfortable really investing too much in there. I would rather find something closer to home. So it's more of a comfort thing, right? But
Mhm.
that's when it's like what one good thing though I would say about the younger generation is they're more likely to take risks on things that are less known and less proven, which is what
Mm.
I've noticed, right?
Mm.
So, for example, my parents' generation say they might not be into as interstate investing, right? They might find somewhere that's within New South Wales or something a little bit safer and a little bit more proven, or even something like a bank like Own Home, right? What Own Home, I think we've spoken about them before. They can
Yeah.
let you put down a 3% deposit, right? And that's something that's absolutely unheard of before.
Correct.
But there's just that much confidence in the market that even with these types of risks that banks are willing to take, they know that they're going to be up in the end, right? So for someone like that, no one's even really heard of a bank like Own Home. So how are they to know, right? And if you were to go to the branch or the first bank you see of, or even online calculators, they can sometimes be incorrect. And sometimes what they would do is they would maybe the bank will under declare how much they can give you just to
Mm.
not give you false hope. Because imagine you go on the website, it tells you you can get 1 million, you get really confident, you call the bank and they say, no, we can only give you 700. It kind of deflates you as well. So there's a little bit of that as well. So it's really important to really know everything. We've got so much information online. Even ChatGPT can do most of it
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
Just type it in ChatGPT, take it to the broker, take it to the buyer's agent and say, is this legit?
Yeah.
Right? And then that's literally that easy.
Yeah, that's so true, man. Like, I think that's a really good point about information being available to so many people today. So if you're talking about that information, I think the younger generation have access to at least understand and develop a framework that will allow them to kind of beat the conditions that we see coming today.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
conditions I'm talking about is basically, you can't get anywhere in 9 to 5. You can barely
Mm.
support yourself or your family. You're not going to
Yeah.
create wealth for your kids or your kids' kids, for example. You're not going to have that, lasting financial freedom that you want to. So how do we educate ourselves now? Because I think the whole point we're doing this podcast is to just spread some information, highlight the
Yeah.
importance of understanding, hey, I'm not saying you invest in property. I'm just saying that, look, there's a very high chance from what we're seeing, because in the 1970s, we saw a clear example of what inflation did to the economy.
Yeah.
Prices
Yeah.
just went skyrocketing higher. And
Yeah.
now, despite how unaffordable everything is today, prices are set to go skyrocketing higher again.
Yeah.
And we've also got a lot of risks to your 9 to 5 job growth. Obviously, you had the industrial revolution and all those things back then, technology, internet coming into play, taking away jobs. Now we've got AI.
Mm.
So
Mm.
you should, to your point, like get your information, get all the knowledge you can, do everything you can to get a deposit for a property or look at hard assets to invest in. In Australia,
Yeah.
we love property because it's the backbone of your economy. We've covered that
Yeah.
before, and you can watch some previous episodes to talk about that. But pretty much, you're investing in the safest asset with a supply shortage, and
Mm.
it will do quite well. You mentioned even, the global economy, equities selling off, this year. There's a lot of charts, and I'm not predicting anything, but personally, I'm not into the going long the market today, or especially from a more long-term view, just because of the fact that there's so many data points that showcase the equity market is more overvalued than the dot-com bubble, and
Yeah.
that is
And I,
insane. And
yeah.
everything's just concentrated like, 7 major stocks, which are now declining. And I think there'll be a very volatile period for the next few years. Um, even Trump's policies, they're short term very negative for the economy, short term. But I think long term, they'll get real job growth and everything else. And I can go about that later, but that will cause disruption. Australia won't
Mm.
have those disruptions, the same amount of disruptions as the global economy, because we're very
Mm.
different. Our market's
Yes.
built on real estate. That's very crucial.
Yeah. Yeah.
The American economy is not built on real estate. Their
Yeah.
technology and their share market is driving that economy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where there's more risks globally, yes, but we're not as, kind of susceptible to those risks today. And that's what's
Mm.
very important for people to understand. So Australia's property market is not the share market. It's not the US
Yeah.
economy. It's not, the European economy. It's very
Yeah.
different. To your point, it's can withstand a lot of global negativity, a global
Mm.
softness, and we've seen that before. In the 2008 recession, for example, our market did decline as a whole around 8% on an Australian average, and we recovered within 2 years.
Mm. Mm.
8% is not a big decline because you've got blue chip areas in Sydney declining 10, 15% every year sometimes.
Yeah. And a
So,
different lens on that is even our standard of living, right? If you compare our standard of living to, say, Europe and the US, with all those things that you just mentioned,
yeah,
comparatively to them, our standard of living didn't really drop that much. We didn't really, and we recovered really well. And now it actually feels like we're going ahead and actually expanding, and our economy is actually looking good, and people are starting to get more confident in it all. So
yeah,
our economy is really different. What's really good about our economy is we kind of jump between China and America, which is really good, right? So it has its benefits and negatives, militarily, which is a kind of different topic. But in a sense of the economy, right, we really can change between the economies on which one
mm,
booms. And Australia does have good relationships with a lot of countries, and
yeah,
a lot of rich millionaires want to come here and want to live here. It's like a really, really good place to live. It's not really a biased thing, right? People are coming here in record numbers, literally, especially millionaires. So all these things are why the property market is so strong and always growing, is because a lot of people are still coming and we still have so much space, and honestly we're not even doing a good job town planning either, and it's still
yeah,
being
yeah,
successful, right?
yeah.
Imagine we start town planning really well and we're actually able to absorb a lot of people at once, right?
Mm,
And also the standard of, we kind of went through a really bad period, especially during COVID, with people losing complete trust in basically all trades, right? And
mm,
I'm slowly starting to see standards become a little bit higher and a little bit better. I'm not hearing as much of apartments just falling apart really quickly.
yeah,
So all these things kind of give more confidence, because that will flow on to, properties, luxury properties, medium-sized properties, no matter what it be. And then the bottom of the barrel will always climb up as well. So all parts of the market, there's a spot for everywhere in Australia, whether you're elite rich or if you just come to the country as a normal immigrant and trying to do well, there's just so much chances and so much opportunity here at the moment.
yeah, 100%, man. And I've seen those data points on like, the richest, top 5% in the world. And a lot of them are migrating to Australia because of our lifestyle and our standards here.
Yeah,
But that all comes back to the point when you've got a lot of wealth coming to the country, it doesn't help the middle class again.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
also very crucial. And these are just
yes,
more signs to kind of forecast what may be coming to Australia and what the economy might look like, what your situation might look like. So that's why I always tell clients, and I speak to so many people like under 25 years old today. And I love when people, are genuinely interested in, learning, getting some, knowledge about growing their wealth, understanding the market, how to best save up for the deposit, what strategies to use, because I think those are the type of people that will be able to get ahead.
mm,
And
mm,
I keep saying this, we can't hate the game. The game's not going
yeah,
to change. All you can do
yeah.
is adapt and you can choose to be in the right side of the equation. Because at the end of the day,
Another
it's only going to benefit you and your family.
Yeah. And another thing I did mention to my cousin yesterday, don't look at the ground, look up. That's one thing I always
Yeah,
try to say. Because if
yeah,
you're looking at the ground, you're gonna miss everything, right?
yeah,
And all you have to do is look up and just see what is kind of happening in front of you. And these trends are happening in Sydney where it's, 300K, as you said, to actually get into the market.
yeah.
What's going to happen in Brisbane and Melbourne when people move from Sydney to there? And then what's
Hmm.
going to happen to, Adelaide and then Perth and then so on and so forth. And all these
Exactly.
cities around Australia, and especially regional towns, they're one places that people are really liking the lifestyle of just that slower, quieter lifestyle. So
Mhm.
there's so many people with so many different kind of lifestyle goals. And as you said, that middle class is just going to squeeze. The only thing you have to do is just kind of pay attention to what's happening in front of you, because as much as doors close, they do open as well. You've just
Yeah,
got to be on it. That's
yeah,
all.
100%. Yeah, it's just about being very alert today, gaining knowledge. It's never been more important, in my opinion. It's never
Yeah.
been more
Yeah.
important because
Yeah.
your actions today can literally make a lifetime of difference tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even this is the next thing I was going to talk to you about was when you're looking at the RBA decision, rate cutting cycle starting. I had some clients over this week, and they're also younger generation, about 25 years old, and they were even mentioning that a lot of their friend group were not confident that rates will continue to go down. In fact, they were still scared they might go higher.
Mm,
Now,
mm,
obviously, that's not out of that's still possible. But basically, if you study the market cycles, if you study what happens when the first rate cut happens, look at the economy, normally when you get one rate cut after a record amount of rate hikes, it's the start of a new cycle. There's like a
mm,
more than 95% chance that you will be getting, multiple rate cuts, and the market's
Mm,
pricing that in. The
mm,
inflation, the rate of inflation is declining as well. The economy is, doing its thing in terms of wage softening. Those things are supporting more rate cuts. But people
yeah,
don't look at the entire picture. They act upon fear, and they don't educate themselves. And I'm
yeah,
not saying I'm right, they're wrong by any means. What I'm saying is that the whole part of investing with knowledge is to stack up probabilities in your favor to get growth, to grow your wealth, to outperform the market. So betting on what the market's pricing in, what the economy is doing, what the inflation readings are saying, rate cuts will happen. You will get more rate
yeah,
cuts in the market.
yeah,
But having that kind of fear without, that information, that misinformation being fed to you, or just being, scared off by one article out of like 100, for example, it's stopping people from you taking action. And that's why I always say, like, if you're truly committed to growing your wealth or making a change in your financial future, you just surround yourself with the right people, or surround yourself
yeah,
with a bunch of different people with different opinions, and
yeah,
educate yourself as much as you can, because you can't just go off one data point or one article you read one day from someone who's views something this way, because that's all opinion based. Everything I'm saying is opinion based. All we're doing is
mm,
trying to back it up as much as we can with what information we have. So
yeah,
I always kind of educate clients that look at the whole picture. Everything we showcase to our, database, our clients, anyone who follows us, is supported by data always. It's supported by facts. And we believe that we are trying, again, to stack up the probabilities to forecast what's going to happen in this market.
mm,
So since the rate cuts have started, apart from, just those kind of few buyers in the market that might be looking to get in, but are still, a bit afraid or not really committed to doing that so far, I've
mm,
just been flat out. Our team has been absolutely flat out. And
yeah,
we were predicting the Q1 rate cut since, November last year. And we always knew that obviously if you buy before the rate cut, you're, in a better position. You're getting into the right markets a lot easier without, buyer competition. Now we're just seeing, buyers are flooding in, a lot of investors are flooding in, market dynamics are changing. What are you seeing? You're on the financial side. How many calls have you
yeah,
got? I remember literally on the day of the rate cut, we did an emergency pod, and you were like, "I'm getting calls right now." So how's it
yeah.
been from your side?
Really, really full on. Same as you. Everyone is wanting money. Everyone's trying to see what they can get. We are obviously getting those simple refinances where they're just trying to lower their rate.
Yeah.
But we are also seeing people now doing, as you're saying, trying to get in before everyone else kind of floods the market. And now what I'm seeing is some purchasers are actually, finding it hard to actually find things on their own too, because there's the supply shortage. I feel like some sellers are thinking, let me hold on if I can a little bit, because if another rate cut happens, I might get another 20, 30 grand on my
Yeah.
property, which is kind of the sentiment to a lot of sellers as well. So it's kind of flooding the market both ways, right? And also what I'm seeing as well is people wanting to do renovations and maybe add dwellings or maybe put a granny flat or something like that, because the rental market is just so stressed at the moment. So
Yes.
really trying to take advantage of that, because even though we're seeing rate cuts, I'm still seeing rent rises. People's rents are still going up,
Of course. Yeah.
right? It's still
Mhm.
kind of a lag effect, I guess, from the mortgages as well. But those are the things that we're seeing the most, and it is a lot more buyers in the market, but I don't know if there's a lot of supply at the moment for people actually selling, because I think they can get better deals.
We have record low supply, man. That's why it's
Yeah,
insane. And that's why it's so
yeah,
important to get in earlier, because if you are looking at a property with buyer competition and you've got like more than 20, 30, 40 groups of people looking at that property, you're going to pay more. So that's
yeah,
why this is, again, a larger topic, but we do most of our buying off of pre-market. So we try to avoid that. But in general, it's always best when you're not competing with buyers. That's a
of course.
guarantee. And what
Yeah.
about the price points, Phil? So has that sentiment changed at all? Because last year and last few years, I should say, people were really looking at the more affordable range in the market. We're still focusing on like, primarily sub 750, sub 800, depending on the locations. Have you seen any
Yeah.
shift towards, close to $1 million at all? Or are you seeing a lot of kind of
It
more
is.
premium properties and locations?
Yeah, it is still about that same price point.
Yeah.
What I'm actually seeing now is clients are willing to take more risks in terms of their interest rates. So what I'm
Mm.
seeing is clients are more willing to take on a bank that might be a little bit more expensive, that's going to give them more money, knowing that rates are probably going to go down. So maybe if I can maybe stretch myself a little bit at the beginning, right? I know in the future it's going to go down. I feel like that's the kind of thought that some people are having. So it is still in that 7 to 800 mark, but there's just no supply there, right? So people are just going to get forced to kind of take that next step up. So people don't want to spend that much, right? No one wants to spend that much, but they don't really have a choice, honestly, at the moment. It's either, develop what you have at the moment, and if you can't, try to find something else. And even then, it's just really, really competitive, as you're saying. Because, I was in Melbourne at the end of last year, and that was before the even rate cuts. And I felt like every place I went to, they had at least 5 families ready to go buy, right? And that
Yeah.
was then. Right. And it's only going to get even more and more competitive now across every kind of market within the country because there's just so much going on. There's just so
Mhm.
much like happening. And the fact that the sentiment to everyone is that it is going to improve, the rates are going to go down. I am going to get more money. I might be able to secure a better job, right? Businesses are starting to feel a little bit better as well. We're kind of really far away from all the extremes that's going on in other countries. So the sentiment there is that, we're trying to buy something is just super competitive.
Yeah, yeah. And have you seen a lot of interest in the higher end markets in Sydney or Melbourne? Because the core logic data released, I think, yesterday, and I was reviewing all of the new data in the packs for February this year. We
Mhm.
saw, CoreLogic saw that the higher end market of Sydney, for example, saw a bit of a price shift upwards. And I
Mm.
think that's also because last year, those markets, greater than $4 million, $5 million in median values actually declined significantly, more
Yeah,
than 5%.
yeah,
So have you been
yeah.
seeing any kind of demand for the higher price properties from your end?
I think so. And I think what people are seeing is like, it might be honestly because of the cyclone that people are kind of scared of Queensland right now. That's what I'm
Yeah,
kind of thinking,
that's a big factor,
right?
yes.
It's kind of a reminder of okay, things can go wrong there really quickly. And a lot,
Correct.
even though luckily not like it wasn't as devastating as we once thought, luckily,
Yep. Yep.
but you never know, right? And so
Yes.
now when people are saying, okay, well, as that kind of sentiment is, Melbourne is as cheap as it's ever been. If I buy something really good there of value, I've got a really good deal because comparatively speaking, it is really good. And the lifestyle in Melbourne is still great. It's still Australia. It's not like it's some second city for it to be, as affected as it is, right? So
Mhm.
it's still a place that people want to go to, still a place that people want to live. And I am seeing that that people are more interested. And as I said, it's the same kind of sentiment of the rates are going to go down. So I'm going to be
Mhm.
even easier to afford this in the future.
Yeah. You know what I
Yeah.
found crazy about that stat? Just after 25 basis point rate cut, you've seen demand flock into higher end Sydney.
Yeah.
Not like that
Yeah.
would change your situation too much,
Yeah.
greater than $4 or $5 million property. And it just
Yeah.
reminded me about the amount of wealth we have entrenched in Sydney, in Melbourne, even in Brisbane now, because people have had assets here for a long period of time. And these are the people again that have got ahead years ago. And now they're able to kind of, ensure they're securing the best grade properties for long term, and they can afford it very easily. It's because they've made the right decisions in the past, I'm guessing. But in Sydney, there's so much wealth here. And that's why even now, like, despite how unaffordable Sydney gets, you're still seeing a very strong demand in all markets. Because to your point, there's no supply. But that
Yeah.
wealth also then transfers into investments interstate. So this
Yeah.
property market's so strong, so much wealth is behind this, this beast that's just keeping this economy going. And even just one rate cut, like we were talking about before, it's not the rate cut, it's sentiment.
Mm,
It's
mm.
sentiment
And that's
driving
what
the
worries
market. Yeah.
That's what really worries us and what we're talking about that middle
Yeah.
class being affected, right? Because there literally is just so much wealth, right? And
Yeah.
if I'm got someone that's just can buy property and can profit off it, why wouldn't I, right? If
Yeah.
I can buy something for 2, 3 mil, put 500K in there, and then it increases by whatever number it is, I am going to do that, right? And what I've seen is I have a very good carpenter friend that lives in the Manly area, and there's just so much construction going on there. Because what I've noticed, especially in that region, it's becoming a lot more densely populated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of these big houses that are becoming a lot smaller. There's a lot more dwellings in tight spaces. The apartments are getting knocked down and built even higher, right? And there's just so much wealth going there. Plus, just outside my office in North Sydney, the freeways and all those tunnels that they're doing, and how
Yeah.
much that is going to actually save in time for a lot of businesses that actually like rely on those roads,
Mm.
right? So it literally it feels like limitless wealth, right? Obviously not, but there's just so much money everywhere where even if you go all the way to the northwest, right, there's still all these $3, $4 million homes. You drive further south, there's still you can still find, go down south to Denham Supreme Court. They're still $2 million, right? And people are affording them, right? And then as you said, the people flooding the top end of the market, I really think it's that sentiment of it's going to get cheap and it's going to get affordable. If I don't get it now, I can't afford it later. That's how
Yeah.
I really feel, right? And that's something I tell clients, right? Whatever the property you find now, it's not going to be this price ever again. Maybe it might go down, but if you look in 5 years, there's not going to be a city in this country that's not going to go up. And what I even say to kind of back this up, the only thing I really think that could make me wrong is if there's some sort of world war. And that's
Yeah.
something that we can't even think about or predict or even consider, right? So it's
Correct.
like it's
Yeah.
happening everywhere. So we can't even negate
That's
that.
like the ultimate black swan event, pretty
Yeah,
much.
it's like, what are you going to do, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The king of black swans coming in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
you made a really good point about Sydney. Like they've rezoned everything pretty much from North Sydney
Yes.
into,
It's the rezoning.
Western
It's the,
Sydney, Southern Sydney. So you
yeah,
can build high density. And what people don't understand is that the wealth in Sydney, you're making a lot of money just by doing renovation, a small
yes.
development in the high premium areas. Even if you're buying in Mosman today and you're buying at a 5% discount, that's 5% on $5 million property or more.
Insane.
That's
Yeah,
close to $1 million in additional equity in like 2 years' time, once it goes
yeah,
back to the original value. So people don't
yeah,
understand those metrics on top of that. So that wealth is just ultimately driving this, premium market. And all those profits are then, being reinvested into the next locations. And it doesn't have to be Sydney. And that's why,
yeah,
regardless of, the fundamentals of, other economies in, Perth, Adelaide, Queensland, and Darwin, wherever it may be, you've still got all this wealth on the East Coast that will be, spread out across Australia because the
yeah.
fundamentals for property are so strong. It's not
Yeah,
changing.
yeah. Any young professional, right? If you're going to buy a property in Sydney and then your next one is going look for an investment, realistically, your borrowing power might have to be those places. So it's
Yeah.
just a natural thing that's going to happen. And there's so many of those people, and it's already been happening, right? People are already from Sydney going to all these interstate places because. Like if like a lot, especially with rent vesting, right? A lot of people, what I've noticed is they'll buy a land, they'll build a house on it, live in it for a little bit, sell it, right? And then they can go buy something interstate and then they can use that their money left over to rent and they can keep rent vesting and they're actually better off and they don't even
Yeah.
own a house in Sydney, right? The one thing I would say to that though is what I really believe is that Sydney is blue chip and if you can hold on to it, I would never ever sell a Sydney property,
Yeah, there
right?
you
Ever,
go. Yeah, yeah.
ever.
And
But
I love the point you made that Sydney is blue chip. That's a fact.
yeah, yeah,
Not this area, not this suburban city, but Sydney
yeah,
is blue chip. And I truly
yeah,
believe that because we're looking at the context of the entire country. And that's very
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Love it.
It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Some more nuggets from Phil. There you go.
Man, it's
Gold
good. It's
nuggets.
always good chatting with you, man. Even you
100%,
keeping up with
man.
them, it's
Yeah.
good to get justified in the same way. I know you're feeling the same thing that we're
Yeah, yeah.
feeling on this.
And
So
honestly,
it's
like we talk about it very casually, but it's a very unfortunate situation, what's happening.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that the main purpose we jump on and we spend time is just to try to spread knowledge and inform people. It's not even
yeah,
about, reaching out to us. It's about just understanding like this is the way, the economy is growing
yeah.
and what's going to happen most likely to a large proportion of Australians, most likely. So please be informed. Just please plan ahead, gain knowledge, have a chat with anyone. The main thing is take action. Do
And be
whatever
positive
you can.
too. And
Yeah,
be
be positive,
positive.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, you
Because
can.
it is scary. It is scary. It is gloomy. It does feel overwhelming, and it is
Yeah.
really hard. It's not easy,
Yeah.
right? Like as soon as you buy the property, the problems don't end there. You know, you
Yeah.
might get a
Yeah.
bad and you might get a new electrical wire they need to fix. So a lot of things can happen, but you just got to be positive. And as long
100%.
as you're doing the right steps and making the right plans, at least you can be confident that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have the right team, man, like to your point, like,
Yeah,
yeah, once you buy the property, things never end. It just started. You're starting your journey,
yeah,
but you want to
yeah,
make sure you have a team that's ready for you every time you need them, that's going to grow with you. And that's what I believe we provide. And that's why
100%.
we're so focused on just, making sure our clients understand all the steps and we're always there to handhold. That's perfect.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course, man. Of
it's awesome
course.
chatting with
It's
you,
good.
man. And we're going to catch up for
Awesome.
the NBA very soon.
For sure,
That's a
man.
very
For sure.
important.
Good to see you, man. See you soon.
100%, man. You have a great day and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, man. Of course, man. Bye.
See you, Phil.